man, it's hot out here, Jamie. Jamie? Oh, don't tell me you gotta go. All right. Who do we got today? Geoff Blackwell? Holy crap, all right. Oh my gosh. Hello and welcome to Talk Heathen! Is that amazing or what?
That's a great intro. I love it.
It is December 2nd, 2018, and I'm Eric Murphy, and this is Geoff Blackwell.
Hello.
Hello. Oh my, I'm so excited that you're here. So
I'm excited to be here. So fantastic.
Okay, so for people who don't know Geoff, Geoff is the Washington attorney for American Atheists. I got to meet him this last March at the American Atheist National Convention, and I absolutely think this guy is amazing. The work that you do is incredible. And I got to ask you, man, just for people who don't know what you do, could you talk a little bit about it?
Sure. Well, I'm the litigation counsel for American Atheists. I am one half of the American Atheist Legal Center down in Washington, D.C. The other half is my boss, Allison Gill, and she handles essentially atheist advocacy, which would be, lobbying and that kind of stuff at the federal and state level. And then I handle our litigation efforts and all the disputes that go on before they reach litigation, and hopefully avoid litigation. So.
Wow.
So that's on me.
Well, so can you give us an example? Like, what kind of stuff are we talking about?
So the most recent one, we just filed a lawsuit against a state senator in Arkansas for blocking atheists on his official government social media page.
Really?
And saying a lot of, if you're atheist, you're, an extremist leftist and shouldn't be listened to, and you're a liar and all this stuff.
Wow.
A lot of really problematic things when it comes to the First Amendment. So we're following in the footsteps of that lawsuit that was filed against Trump on his Twitter account. So.
All right. So as far as, I'm sorry, I'm just kind of reeling. That's really, really cool, man. And I know that you've done other pursuits as well. Do you want to talk about any of your other projects?
Sure. Well, right now we're really pushing because, we just dealt with election season, and we're now bringing in a lot of new elected officials. We want atheists to engage with their elected officials online, in the same vein of our lawsuit with Jason Rapert. We are trying to get atheists to speak out, both when they see lawmakers and government officials doing the right thing and taking action that protects the separation between religion and government, and also speaking out against their actions when they are harming that separation and bringing their religion into places it shouldn't be. I'm here in Austin because tomorrow I have to be in Houston for proceedings relating to a lawsuit that we filed for a student who sits for the Pledge of Allegiance and was harassed by students and teachers as a result, and some administrators.
Oh, up on the screen, is that what you're talking about?
That is, yes, that's the cover of American Atheist Magazine, a bi-monthly magazine for members that is highlighting our lawsuit that was just filed in October.
Dude, you are busy, man.
Very busy.
What else is American Atheists up to?
Oh, boy. So we are, Jim Helton, our field director, is making a number of pushes for evidence-based sex education. We are obviously gearing up for the war on Christmas. Gotta fight the war on Christmas.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of stuff going on. More, if I talked about everything we've got going on, that would be the whole show, and we'd never get to these fantastic callers that we have. So.
What about any conventions coming up? Can we touch on that one?
Well, yes, we can definitely touch on the convention.
Okay.
Every Easter, American Atheists holds its national convention. This year, or this coming year in 2019, it's going to be in Cincinnati, Ohio, the weekend of April 21st. And go to atheists.org to get more information about the upcoming convention. And
That is really awesome.
It's going to be really exciting. I always look forward to our conventions. They're a lot of fun.
It was the very first one that I got to go to, and I am incredibly grateful. And I'm really happy that I got to become friends with you. That just
mutual.
Dude.
You get to meet so many interesting people that are doing, whether in atheist activism or just the things that the experiences they bring that are incredibly interesting to hear. So
we are going to hop into calls, but before we do, I just want to make my usual announcement that we're going to be thanking our top 5 patrons toward right around just past the middle of the show. If you want to be mentioned by name on air, you can go to patreon.com/talkheathen-to-me. That's patreon.com/talkheathen-to-me. Talk Heathen, just like all the other shows out of the ACA. This ACA is a 501c3 nonprofit. It's your donations that keep us going, and we really, really appreciate it. As for the rest, we'll make a couple other announcements throughout the show, but I think people are ready for calls. So to dive in, I'd love to start with Rob in Long Island. Rob is a regular caller. He has called in a couple times, and he's been pretty fun to talk to. Rob, you're live with Eric and Geoff.
Yeah, how you doing, Mr. Murphy? Hey, Mr. Attorney Blackwell.
Hey, so what did you want to talk about today?
I think we should go back and discuss the Great Flood, as according to the Holy Bible.
Okay. Do you remember the homework that I gave you at the last time we talked?
You know, it's a funny thing. I missed last weekend for a specific reason.
Oh, no, the last time you were on air.
Like I said, there's not much time around here to accommodate a lot of things. First, I had to research the book you held up in the air. It was called the Book of Eric, I believe.
Yeah, I've got it right here. It is my holy book. There's not much to research on it. And the reason...
I had to, let's say, zoom in on it to see what the cover really read.
Mm-hmm.
First, I thought I saw Jonathan Livingston Seagull.
Now, if you want to zoom in, let's see if we can get it. It says, The Book of Eric, true because I say so.
True because you say so. And then I thought I saw the Reluctant Messiah on the cover. I still don't see the Book of Eric. I see a kind of an old paperback kind of thing.
Sure.
Wait, it is real. It is real. I thought it said Mary had a little lamb on the cover.
All right. So the reason I brought it up is because you were saying that you were using the Bible to justify believing it. And I said, well, if you're using the book to justify it itself, then other people can do the same thing with other books. And so
how many copies have you sold?
If I outsell the Bible, will that make it more true?
If you could even come close to Stephen King, you would be a phenomenon, but you aren't.
Wait, are Stephen King's books true because they sell a lot? So
he's a writer that is well read.
Yeah, the homework that I gave you was to be able to say and be able to tell me how you distinguish between this book and the Bible, and how you determine which one is true and which one is not. And I said that is your key to getting back on the show, right? So
one of my answers is your book isn't that popular, so obviously you're not much believed in.
Are you a Poe?
As Christ or God is.
That is either you're a Poe or you can't possibly believe that popularity makes it true, right?
Because I believe on the show
I'll tell you that there are more Muslims than Christians in the world. So if that was true, then Allah would be far more true than the account in the Bible.
Yes, if you look at the beginning of the Quran, he does specifically believe in the God of Abraham. As time passes, you will see that he moves himself from Israel because God defended Israel against the heathens of the Middle East. And then once again, God allowed him to unite the Middle East because of the problems they were having, even though the religion is very faulty.
So, again, diving right back in, right? How can you determine the truth of one book versus the other. So the first response that you gave me is called it's the ad populum fallacy. It's true because it's popular. We know that's fallacious because if something gains popularity, it doesn't become more or less true, right? And I'm sure that you would understand that.
That's a philosophy of a book, but the reality is people don't follow the book or follow because of other followers. It's an individual belief in God and Christ himself. Each person follows God. He does not follow people who follow God.
So hold on.
The truth of the religion.
So it feels like you kind of disregarded the question and said that it wasn't necessary, right? So you obviously the first thing you said is your book isn't popular. And so now you're kind of walking away from it. How else can you determine the truth of one book over the other?
Past, present, and future. Right now we're working on the present. The past has already been decided. God has made this world a better place to live in for multitudes of people. Presently, we're going through a little bit of Gentilism, and we have some heathenism coming in that is kind of mixing up the scene.
What does that have to do with the question?
And there have always been heathens.
Yeah.
So
not as many. You know, it's been more. You know, the problems with society has increased with mass media. If you wish to tie it in together, we all watch it, we all listen to it, but when you see the effects of it, we notice that God, the church,
is laying a rabbit trail.
Yeah, and far fewer people were openly non-believers when they would be killed for saying it. So, you know, it's tough to ascribe, you know, the rise of open, let's say heathen, because that's the show.
Sure.
To, you know, the rise of mass media or the, you know, decline of the religious leaders' ability to, you know, kill or imprison the people who disagree with them and speak out against the things they say and do. So I'm not sure where you're getting at with that question.
We're talking about the past, present, and future.
No, we're talking about Rob.
The Communist Party, which has deliberately controlled the religious states in their communities, have caused great harm against their own country.
Rob, we're talking about
facts and numbers.
We're talking about the legitimacy of the Bible. That's what we're talking about, because that is your entry to this show. So instead of sidetracking,
I think the problem is here because I've watched your show and people have come up and they said, "Look, I've seen one miracle, my child was healed. I've seen another miracle, my child was healed. I've seen another miracle, another person was healed." They tell you they tell you the facts, and you deny the facts. So you expect an answer when you deny the answers yourself.
How does that make your Bible more true than my book?
I just explained it to you. Statistics. The best explained is statistics.
I didn't hear a single statistic.
No, I didn't.
Religion is purposely taken away, is a less beneficial society and a more cruel society.
Hold on. So are you saying that the less religion is in a society, the more cruel it is? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I'm saying that completely.
In your experience, what would you say about that?
I would say that thank you. I would say that it seems the more religious a society is, the more violent it is, and the more secular a society is, the happier people are, and the less violence. Violence is less prevalent in a society. So I think you're dead wrong, frankly.
So sitting back here and listening to both of you, right? I'm hearing two assertions, right? You're asserting that a secular society is a better one, and Rob, you're saying that a religious society is a better one, right? So how do we determine who's being honest or who's closer to the truth? I guess the best way to do that is to examine the evidence, correct?
Yes.
All right, Rob, let's start with you. Have you come across any evidence that would indicate that a religious society is one that is inferior to a secular one?
America.
Any actions that people have taken on behalf of their religion, or I don't know, maybe in government, or in the classroom, or police departments, or anything like that? Did anything come to mind?
Classroom, let's go through history. We pretty much won the war against imperialism under a general who was a known, very fanatical religious leader, George Washington. We overcame slavery from the North, from the right North, which was also a very religious community. The country has gone through many endeavors during its religious. The whole country was settled upon religion. If you didn't have faith, you probably couldn't ride across the country.
Okay, hold on.
Okay, the country was founded by a community of people that were predominantly Christian, sure, but the country was founded on Enlightenment ideals that were a response to Christian theology, largely. The founders looked to John Locke and Rousseau for the principles that they, enshrined in, whether it's the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution. So I really, I struggle to understand where you're getting this idea from.
Well, the Church of England, which was started by the king who wanted to divorce his wives, I believe, and beheaded his people, pretty much we had to leave that country because of an illegitimate government once again.
So he was using his religion to get his way and enforce his will? Is that what you're saying?
No, he actually...
You're not saying he was using religion to...
Wait.
I'm really confused now.
Yeah, because
it sounds like you're making my point for me.
Yeah, you do realize that he established the Church of England, right?
So he could get a divorce.
Sure.
The establishment of a state religion is the establishment of a state... I don't know how you can... But Rob, I think you had a chance. Geoff, do you have any examples of how a religious society could be more or less beneficial than a secular one?
Well, absolutely. I mean, you could look at, the number of homeless teens in Utah because they have been kicked out of their homes by their religious parents for being gay or for being atheists.
Sure.
Meanwhile, an atheist parent isn't going to kick out their child for disagreeing with them. I don't think I've heard of a single example of that happening. You have teachers who are, there are documented cases of a teacher burning a cross into a school student's skin. You're not going to get that from a secular, an atheist individual because there's no reason for it. The religious tenets motivate people to do bad things. I don't know how better to put it.
So hold on.
There was,
go ahead.
I believe it was Hitchens who said, was it Hitchens or Dawkins who
had... What cases are you involved in, and how many court cases are actually on the docket? I would say your number against Christianity are minute compared to the compilation of cases that evolve around secular problems.
Hold on, Rob. Wait.
I have absolutely no idea what the number. I'm one attorney, so I can only file, so many lawsuits.
If Rob, I'm sorry. If Geoff, sorry about that.
Yeah, that's okay.
If Geoff filed more lawsuits, would that convince you that a secular society was better than a religious one?
Boy.
No, because that's kind of what you're saying, right? Your response to that.
Attorney, is hypothetical situations allowed in the courtroom at all? I do not believe so.
That's why you just got a whole bunch of actual things that happened told to you.
And you can ask an expert witness a hypothetical question. That's why they're expert witnesses. They can
drop in the bucket to expand the theory of secularity that does not exist.
Okay, non-religious is secular. Secular is non-religious. If there's anything that is not religious, that is secular. I don't know how you can deny that that is a thing that exists. But backing up, right? We're talking about this because you're saying that the Bible is true over my book because you think that the Bible has made society better, right? And I tried to jump in and say, if another book can make society better, would that make it more true than the Bible, right?
Once again, it's a hypothetical question. The book is not, you do not have a book. You propose there is a book. So hypothetically, since you have a lawyer in the room, you couldn't propose that in front of a judge.
Could you?
And the book, and if you realize there is a book of Judges in the Bible.
I'm not here as an attorney. I'm here as an atheist, and this isn't a courtroom, and we're just having a conversation. So I really don't know why the rules of evidence need to be brought into it. But like I just said, an expert witness can in fact be asked a hypothetical question on the stand. So your point is false. You know, I could probably qualify Eric as an expert on religion, frankly, and ask him about, ask him the very question he just asked you.
Right. So Rob,
I would say that Eric even couldn't be an expert on religion because he's anti-religion, and I would say his opinion's biased.
Okay. So Rob.
Wait a second. I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah. Do you?
Because, so are you saying that we would have to find an expert with no position on religion, someone who has spent, years studying an issue, taken no position on it, in order for them to be able to answer a hypothetical question?
If such a witness was possible, yes. I would say since most a lot of Christians don't go around pronouncing their religion, first of all. So you would have to really go into a religious household, someone that's been attending for years, children. I think that witness would be a modest witness for a court scene.
So an unbiased witness would be someone who is Christian and an expert in religion.
Just lived the Christian life, raised a family by it, and that would probably be the best witness.
Didn't you teach Sunday school?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so he counts. I still don't know what point you're making, but it's a digression. You're distracting from the underlying point that apparently you guys have had in prior conversations, which is, how do you know that the Bible is true?
Because
I mean, you mentioned communism earlier, and I can tell you the Communist Manifesto has sold an awful lot of copies. So how do you know that communism isn't true?
Just for the fact the only way it comes into power is to genocide millions of its own people. Isn't that apparent to your studies?
No, Rob. Hold on.
Stalin didn't make sense to you?
No, hold on.
Yes.
So here's the thing, right? I feel like the tools that you're using to determine truth are shitty tools. And I can actually show you why. Right? And then what I'd like to do is show you what a good tool looks like and why it looks good, right? So there are so many fallacious things there. And fallacious doesn't mean that you're doing something intentionally wrong. It means that logically it can't follow, right? So let's start with the appeal to consequent, right? Well, I actually went over this last week in a call. The appeal to consequent is if you say, if this is true, then it's yucky or it's bad, right? So, if I were to say, hey, here's a dude that, is a rapist, and we know that they're a rapist, but that person said, oh, no, if that person was a rapist, that would be bad, so it can't be true, right? The fact that it's bad doesn't have any impact on whether or not it's true. So in the communism example, you're saying communism can't be true because it relies on bad things. Now, we can go into history again, but I feel like that's going to be a rabbit trail. So I'm just going to take you at what you said because you believe it, and the point of it is that if you're saying that, communism doesn't exist because bad things have happened, then that's a really weird, direction to go. But the other ones, right? The ad populum argument. Is it more popular? Has it sold more copies? Right? That also doesn't matter with whether it's true or not, because there are a lot of books out there that have sold bajillions of copies and they're works of fiction.
And also, I mean, the books of the Bible, there was a first copy of the first, book of Job. And so at that point, only one person had read it. So was it less true than now when countless, millions of people have read it? Or,
No, you're absolutely right, man. And so we're not trying to be a thorn in your side. We're just pointing out what's wrong with that epistemology. And I want to give you better tools, right? So I don't feel like I've given you some really great tools. I felt like I've asked and explored yours and said, that's not good. But that doesn't really help you out. So I'd like to help you out. Is that okay, Rob?
I have a tool for you. Sure. We're going to bring back Utanapishtim. He is the uncle of Gilgamesh. He was a witness to the flood.
It's Gilgamesh.
The flood.
So
not many people read Babylonian.
Go on.
Also, we're going to talk about Humbaba, who was actually an Israelite in the forest. Then, who else do we have here that wishes to speak? Enkidu, who was actually an Israelite who turned heathen, joined Gilgamesh to kill Humbaba. Gentlemen, we have an Israelite that kills his own brother, becomes a heathen, and then we have a witness to the flood, which did not flood the world, but just killed off the people around Noah's family when they were about to attack. I just gave you a tool into history.
That's not a tool. That's you're misapplying some mythology. Enkidu and the flood myths that, by the way, predate Judaism are wholly irrelevant. And in fact, well, not irrelevant. They show the evolution of a lot of these religious beliefs and how how these stories morphed and were reapplied for the purposes to the purposes that served whatever community had adopted them.
We were yes, sir. So we are talking about the same tool. I'm taking a book that was written, that has been read, that was translated about a king named Gilgamesh. Also, I'd like to add that Enkidu, after he betrayed the Israelite community and slept with the prostitute, he was a herder and lost the spirit of God. He actually died a mysterious death.
Rob, I feel like it would be disingenuous of me to let you continue, because I feel like. Right, hold on.
History is history.
Yeah, I feel like you're misunderstanding what I was saying, and I'll take full responsibility for that. Right. What I'm trying to say is your epistemology doesn't have to do with the specific circumstance. It has everything to do with how you apply a method. Right. So an example would be, if you were looking for the cure for cancer, or if someone said that they had the cure for a specific cancer. Right, you would test it and find out. But if it happened once, then you only have a sample size of one, so that might be the only time that it happened. It could have been some other circumstance. And so what you do is you test that cure over and over and over and over and over and over and over, and you test its efficiency. And if it's efficient, if it works, then you can determine that that is a cure or a viable cure. And if it doesn't, then you can go, you know what? It's not a viable cure for cancer. And so how do we apply that to the Bible, right? If the Bible, hold on. If the Bible were true, we could do a lot of different things to test it, right? We can test the power of prayer, because in the Bible it says that if you pray, God will make those things happen, right? There are tons of verses that have to do with drinking poison and handling snakes, and there are lots of situations where people have tested that and died, right? There are different accounts of things historically that going into the historical record didn't happen, right? We can point to the Exodus of Egypt, right? The 40 years in Egypt, where if you were to expect a society leaving a country, that there would be tons of archaeological evidence along that trail, which there is none.
I would like to say that they lived in tents that were not really, you're not going to find cloth that is thousands of years old.
Have you ever seen 100 people camp? Ever?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a mess, and that's after a weekend.
And you know what people do when they camp? They eat and do all the other things that human beings as animals do. They leave behind their trash. And one of the ways that we identify Jewish settlements from other settlements is you see the bones of the animals they eat, and Jewish communities, you don't see the bones of the animals that are unclean. And the archaeologists have said, look, we cannot find any evidence of not only the Exodus, like not only leaving Egypt, but mass numbers of Jews enslaved in Egypt.
Yeah.
So,
well, and I think that a Christian would be able to say that they were fed with manna from heaven, so they didn't need to kill animals. But you could find clothing, you could find broken pottery, you could find a ton of other things that are just as likely, right? A ton of other things. People leave things behind. I mean, even when you set up camp, right? The place is different, especially if you're talking about that many people over that many years, right? So these are tests that we have done to determine whether or not what is said in the Bible is true.
In fact, I think at the beginning of the call, Rob, you mentioned the flood. And one of the things that we can do is look at other cultures and see whether they record such an incident. And the Chinese history has no record of their entire civilization being flooded, which seems to be contraindicated by the story of the Bible.
So we're trying to. What I'm trying to say is when people who don't believe in God, and that's the spiritual content in which you read the Holy Bible, you can't discern it.
Whoa! Hold on! Stop! Stop! Hold on!
It's been given to me that the flood, that God Himself was a protectionist for the Israelites in the Middle East because of Adam and Eve as a promise. At a specific time, they were the last to fall from the Garden of Eden.
Okay, so you're starting, Rob, with the conclusion in mind. That's called a circular argument. You said you have to believe it's true to believe it's true, right?
It's a linear. No,
that makes
linear.
Zero sense.
It's not.
It has a history.
You said that you need to have the Holy Spirit to be able to discern the truth, right?
True. Right? Yes,
so
correct.
You're saying you have to already believe it in order to believe it. Do you get how absolutely ass backwards that is?
No, it's not.
So,
do you do that anywhere else in life? Do you do that anywhere, Rob?
Can I ask
real
briefly, Rob, if you need to have the Holy Spirit in order to believe, I'm curious how you came to have the Holy Spirit initially.
My journey? You want my journey?
I'm just wondering. Apparently, you had the Holy Spirit before you adopted the or came to truly believe Christianity. So I'm wondering how you came to have the Holy Spirit beforehand.
It came down to me from heaven while I was working on an assembly line. Does that fit your scenario? I mean, I don't know. It's the truth.
Okay, so
Lost then was found. It's that is the supper of the Lamb.
Well, then I need to wait for the Holy Spirit to come down to me, and we can't.
Yeah,
you'll just have to wait. We can't be convinced until the Holy Spirit comes down to us of its own volition, I guess.
That's kind of like taking your ball and going home, isn't it? Well, you can't talk to me on my level because you don't have the same magic powers that I do. Rob, I could say
you can say that all you want.
Right. I could lie to you, and I could say, "Hey, Rob, I have the Holy Spirit, and I'm discerning that you're absolutely wrong. That the Bible's literally true." Right? And we could have an entire argument about that. But what we would both be basing that on is an assertion that has zero basis in reality. Right? You need to be able to show why it is true. Right? I bring up this book and compare it with yours because what you have been doing this entire time is exactly what I said at the start. You're using it to prove itself true. And then when you got off of it, you said, no, you have to already believe it's true before you can even accept its truth. Otherwise, it just looks like not true. But you know what, Rob? That is totally circular. I mean, listen back. Right? You're starting with the end in mind. You need to start Rob, you need to start by asking, what is true? And then follow the evidence, and go where it leads, right? You don't.
Evidence is already, it's a linear history. I gave you another complete writing that came from another civilization describing the flood, that also has someone who survived the flood, describes the actions of his brothers and why they took land from people.
Okay.
And you're ignoring another civilization of writing.
Because that is not an epistemic issue. My question for you is, how do you know a thing is true? And instead, you gave me an example of one way that you think a thing is true, but you didn't actually give an example of why you think it's true, right?
You basically said that The Lion King is true because Hamlet exists.
Right. That's exactly it. That is fucking exactly it. That's a wonderful way of saying it.
Listen, first of all, gentlemen, you cannot say that I used the word
really
Lion
good.
King or Hamlet. Believe me, I watched The Lion King. We are just talking about reality and the use of hyperboles to change a conversation.
I'm not changing the conversation. You said that the legend of Gilgamesh and Enkidu verifies the Bible. Those legends predate the events that are described in the Bible and were adopted by those who created the biblical stories.
And so in that way, Hamlet predates The Lion King. And The Lion King borrowed very heavily the story of Hamlet. Therefore, Hamlet makes The Lion King true, right? He used the structure of the way you used reason and showed you very clearly why that reasoning is poor, right? So again, I'll ask you one more.
Again, Gilgamesh was
hold on. Again, Rob. Hold on, Rob. Again, how can you determine that your book is true and my book is not?
Linear of history.
Okay, so I will write a book and I will bury it for 5,000 years. And in 5,000 years, because it's old, it's true. Do you know that there are holy texts that are older than the Bible?
Does it matter?
Yes, it
Apparently
does.
it does. I'm not sure why.
This is your reasoning. You just said because it's old.
What are we talking about?
You just said because there's a history that you can point to that makes it true. We can point to other histories that would make other religions true. Do you get that?
Are they still around?
Yes, some of them are. And some of them have been actually passed through and have moved into other religions and morphed and informed other religions. Just, for example, the Bible, right?
Yeah.
So, again, you're not using good tools. Rob, if you had a good tool, right? Say I investigated it, and based on that investigation, I've been able to find this. Please, Eric, investigate it. Here's the tools. And yourself, you can determine that it's true as well. You don't need to convince me. You don't need me to convince you. You don't need to convince yourself before you even read it. No, you can test it, right? Do you think that your God is so afraid of being found that God wouldn't be testable?
No. That's why I'm here.
Okay, so
to give you the
are you your
of what you speak?
Are you your God?
No, I'm not.
So why is your God hiding so good?
Hiding
so well?
He's all around.
Okay. So
he's just hiding from us because we haven't had the virtue of being given the Holy Spirit.
And because we haven't been given the Holy Spirit, we haven't been convinced that it's already true. Therefore, we're not convinced it's already true.
Exactly. I don't know why you're struggling with this.
I obviously, there's something wrong with me. Rob, listen back to this. I want you to call back, and I want to be able to discuss this, but I think that there's a lot of content there.
We used up a lot of time, but nothing. We got nowhere.
No, we got a lot. We got a lot out of this, Rob. Rob, we got a lot out of this. What we got out of it is what epistemology is. It is the tools that you use to understand a thing that whether or not it is true. Epistemology is not the story of Enkidu, right? Epistemology is the process that you use to determine whether or not a thing is true, right? And the process that you just gave me, are you waiting for your turn to talk or are you listening?
I'm interjecting.
Okay. I'm actually listening and responding. I'd appreciate it if you did the same, right? So the process that you showed us is one where you said it's historical, right? I can point toward history, therefore this book is true, right? That is the process. I don't care about the minutia, because then about the minutia, the actual stories, then we're getting into, you know, a process without first figuring out whether or not that process is going to lead us to a true conclusion. And we gave you examples of why the process you just gave us is a poor one. And from there, I think you're going to need to take a look and over the next week, I know I'm going to watch this again. I hope that you watch this again. And if you see, right, if you can see that the appeals that you made don't lead to true conclusions, right, I'm excited to hear why you know that your book is true and my book is not. Because up until this point, you have not yet made that distinction.
Before we close, gentlemen, I'd like to say that up until the time the Gutenberg press was printed, people did not read the book, that the book was a living book because they were told about the book and they lived, and through the imagination and the learnings of life, the book lived without printing for thousands of years. The Gutenberg printing press changed the way we see the Bible and the way it was taught.
The Gutenberg printing press allowed for mass production of printed works, but there were plenty of printed Bibles before the Gutenberg press.
And also, how does that make the information in the Bible more true?
I have no idea.
You've got a lot of homework to do, Rob.
I do it all the time.
Cool.
Gentlemen, your facts do not fit. That is the rule of law. Your facts do not fit. Your numbers do not fit.
Hold on, Rob. You just said that to a lawyer. We're going to give the last word to Geoff.
I mean, I really don't know that the law factors in. You've provided no evidence. You've just made a bunch of assertions. I've provided you with some counterpoints. Eric has provided you with some counterpoints. And you'll have to decide how to go about determining what's true from what's not.
Can we? Is there a quick way to have a bibliography drawn up of thousands of books on history just to say I have evidence? Is that what you need? A screen with books written on Christianity and the survival of man for thousands of years?
No. What I need from you.
That is what you would get.
No.
Copy after copy after copy.
Again,
then you
Rob.
actually need the testimony of people who've lived Christian lives that aren't even written about.
Which is an entirely different fucked up epistemology.
And you could say the exact same thing about Islam, Hinduism, Zoroastrianism. It doesn't get you anywhere. It just tells you that people believe things. And I agree with you that people believe things.
Yeah. So find a good process that we can use together to determine whether or not is true. I don't need more appeals that way. I need a process to be able to determine whether or not it's true, because we feel that asking about it and following where the evidence leads, because we want to know what is true about this world more than we want to push a specific dogma, right? Do you think that either of us, if we were actually shown evidence, if we were given a process to determine whether or not that was true, that was a good, usable process, that we'd stick our fingers in our ears? Like, we want to know it's true, man.
Actually, it just occurred to me since we were talking about law. I should have brought this up much earlier, but there's a rule of evidence that excludes what's called hearsay. And if you were to try and introduce the Bible and a bunch of other written works as evidence, they would be excluded from the argument because they are hearsay. They are like the epitome of what you can't bring into court as evidence.
Hold on. So you're saying that someone would need to have that direct experience to be able to testify?
Right. You can only testify to your own experience, or if you're an expert.
Okay. So do you think that if the Bible were true, that Doubting Thomas would be able to testify because Doubting Thomas went to Jesus and felt the crucifixion wounds?
Sure. If you were to call Doubting Thomas, he could testify to what he saw and experienced.
Or about Saul, who later became the Apostle Paul, right? Who had the road to Damascus moment and experienced that miracle, that Paul could then testify to that, correct?
Correct. And then I would bring in an expert on neurology and explain exactly what he experienced and why.
I think that's far more likely, my friend. Rob, I hope that helps.
That was interesting.
Please, please, please listen back to this, and hopefully you'll be able to kind of glean from it that we're looking for a process. And so far, the processes that you've given us, have been poor, and we've given explanations as to why. Until then, though, you have a wonderful.
It was. Have a good evening, gentlemen.
You
bye
too.
bye.
All right, how was that?
That was fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I really liked it. He's fun. He's seems like he's waiting for his turn, but the fact is, he stops, he listens, he comes back, and even if he never gets there, hopefully people who watch and use that same reasoning can kind of get an outsider view and go, oh, that's actually not a really great reason. Maybe it can help someone else.
And if he structures his thinking a little better, and we can have a more I'm missing the word. Have a more structured discussion that doesn't go from the Bible is the most read book and therefore true to the myth of Gilgamesh. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know we just talked to a religious scholar, so let's move to someone who I absolutely adore, Frode in Norway.
Hello, gentlemen.
Hey, brother.
Hello.
Did I say it right?
Almost.
Oh, God damn it. So, Frode?
Yes.
Yeah, that was it?
Yeah, almost.
Fuck. All right, fine. Frode, this is Geoff. Geoff, Frode.
Hi, Frode.
Hello.
What would you like to talk about today?
Well, I haven't called back for a little while because I had a change of heart and I moved from theist to atheist. It's been a hard road. I'm not going to lie. There's still things I'm stuck in doing now that I see stupid. The other day I prayed, for example. I still have a tendency to what should I say? Do things I know that is not rationally what I have become, but I still do them because it feels right or it feels comforting. So yeah. I kind of want to talk a little about how that is and how to quit doing things I was used as doing as a theist now that I don't look at myself as a theist.
Okay. So, number one, there's no deity that is going to smite you for praying after you realize that prayer doesn't work.
Right.
In fact, yeah. So if, number one, a lot of people actually convert to mindfulness meditation and things like that. But the fact is that in time, it's not going to feel as good. It won't have that same, effectiveness that you're used to. But that's okay. That's okay. The process after you leave religion. When I left, I didn't know where to land. I had no idea what to do. I didn't know how to account for morals. I didn't know, I was like, well, then what about hell? What happens after I die? Is it all meaningless? There was this whole nihilism and there are all of these things stacked up. On top of that, there were these landmines. So when my grandma passed away, I didn't just have to mourn her, but I got to mourn everyone else that I had convinced myself I was going to get to see again. And all of the regret and pain of that was devastating. And so, Frode, the reason I'm bringing these things up is because it takes time. And there's not a wrong way to do it, and nobody's going to call the atheist police to pull your atheist card. I mean, in time, what you need to be mindful of is how you can replace some of those things that you've come to depend on, right? So, you know, why do you want to be a good person? Well, being a good person for being a good person's sake is a pretty damn good reason, right? You know, taking the time to meditate, right? Taking time to yourself to think about a thing, you know, and to calm yourself down is a wonderful thing that you can do. Don't just leave it for nothing, you know, but in time, those are things that you can try. Does that help?
I think what I find the most irritating, though, is that when I do it, I usually go like amen or something like that, and it's like it's kind of a weird assassination, but it's almost like masturbating. When you come, you're more calm, you're more satisfied, you're more like your pulse is kind of like lower because you had some
which is why Talk Heathen is pro-masturbation.
That's right.
Absolutely. Secular sexuality actually ends their show with saying, go give yourself an orgasm, or find somebody and give, you know, consensually give them an orgasm. You know, it's fantastic. Yeah, no, totally. That's okay.
But it is kind of the same thing in the way that I do it, because I feel like
I'm not sure we need to know how you go about it.
Hey, I might not want to take notes.
Okay, all right, go ahead.
No, but I feel relieved when I am done praying. That's my point. And I find that irritating because I know I'm praying to a false god, and therefore it's like, when I'm done with it, I feel like I'm almost betraying myself in praying to a god that I don't believe in. Do you understand what I mean?
Yes. And I have something to say, but you go ahead.
I was just going to say, you know, I had a similar experience when I was in high school. You know, I was an out atheist, but, you know, I hadn't read, you know, philosophy or anything like that. I wasn't as, I don't know, solid in my understanding of the arguments and that kind of thing. And there was this girl at high school that I really liked, and I made a deal with God that in case there's a God, I'm going to hedge my bets and say, you know, I'll refrain from this thing that the book says is a sin, and if I do that, then, you know, when I ask her out, she'll say yes. And then I proceeded to do the sin, and we went out anyway. So.
So well, and this can be very empowering, Frode, because if you don't believe now, if you don't believe that God exists, do you think that God existed when you prayed to that God before?
No.
So if that God didn't exist at the time then either, that means that what you were able to change, what you were able to affect by praying, you can still do, because that power was yours the entire time.
But isn't it hypocritical to pray to a God that you don't believe in, though? Isn't that kind of a hypocritical thing to do?
So in time, like I said, it's going to lose its veneer. It's not going to stand up forever, which is why I'm saying that keep in mind that there are other things that you can do to help, because eventually it's not going to feel so good. But in the meantime, we're not judging you, man.
Yeah, and praying is really in nothing more than introspection and meditation, which have beneficial, you know, aspects. One of the nefarious things about religion is that they monopolize that and say you can't experience these calming effects without making it a prayer to a higher power. And I imagine as you know, as you develop, you know, the skills outside of the religious context, that the prayer aspect, the higher power part of your, you know, mindfulness will drop away entirely on its own. Everyone has a process, and you do you.
Yeah, man. In the meantime, I hope you know that the people in the live chat and the people online on our social media, on Facebook, on Discord, on Reddit, there are so many people who've written in, emailed, and said that they are so happy for you. I hope you know that where you are, you got so much love, man, including the people in the back. The people in the back have told me over and over, we've talked about you because we're happy for you. We're happy that, you are taking this next step, and it's a scary one, but it's one that focuses on what's true. And
no, and it's something I talked to my dad about the other day, and to be completely honest, my parents has not taken this in a good way. Sorry, I'm trying to keep my calm, but
it's okay. Take your time.
My dad is maybe the hardest when it comes to religion, because he is really active in his Pentecostal church. And some of my fears of what we talked about before about ambivalence comes from him, and I see myself in him in so many ways. And when I told him that I didn't believe in God, he said something really awful to me that I felt like was about awful thing to say, and he said that me and God is disappointed in you, and I felt like
yeah. No, I get it, man.
Getting the feedback like that gets you so damn down, because you feel like you feel like a hypocrite going around not saying what you believe. But for example, like I know that Christmas this year is going to be so much different because he now sees it as his agenda to bring me back to the field. Like he looks at me as this lost sheep.
Yeah.
And instead of seeing that I am now liberated, he thinks that I am stuck in hell. So he doesn't look at me as liberated. He looks at me as a fallen one. And I think that's maybe one of the hardest things to see and hear, the disappointment from people around you that has been so important in your life.
Yeah. So,
but then standing there and like saying but I don't believe. Like that's it's. Like I said, it hasn't been easy. It just have been worth it because I feel like I don't need to. I don't have the hesitations that I did before. I live my life to the fullest, where I felt before I was trapped in this ongoing thing of, what will God think if I lose the spoon on the floor? Now, when I lose the spoon on the floor, guess what? I pick it up instead.
Yeah. So
there's a difference between those two things.
Yeah. I think in my experience, there are a lot of people, especially people who are really, really into the church, who equate the word atheist with a lot more than not believing.
Oh, yeah.
And so there are a lot of people who stood up and said, Mom, Dad, or family, or whoever they're talking to, I don't believe anymore, or I'm an atheist. Even though that's what they said, what the family member hears is, I don't want to be involved in your life anymore, or I don't care about you. I don't love you the same way, or I don't want to be involved, or I don't want to interact with you anymore. That there are all of these. There's all this baggage that comes with the words atheist or non-believer or secular. Oh my gosh, that was a really bad one. You know, I actually used to equate that with Satan. You know, it wasn't not religious. It was absolutely out the other end, Satan.
Right.
You know, and so I think over time, what I would suggest that you do, you have already indicated to us that you are a loving son. And what's going to help that situation is by continuing to be a loving son, right? A lot of those reactions are based on fear.
Oh yeah.
It's fear of losing your child. It's fear of your child wanting to split away from you or to condemn you. And in reality, it sounds like not only do you care, but you want to be able to share these things about your life with your father. And given time, he's going to see that you're still the son that he knows. But it's going to take those experiences happening, and it's going to feel rough. But you know that when you made this decision, that didn't change the way that you feel about your loved ones. It had nothing to do with that.
Yeah, you just have to show him that you're the same Frode. I'm sorry, this is the first time I'm trying to get my mouth around your name. You're the same Frode you've always been.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's just like I think I feel even worse for praying, because like I have a little like voice in my head saying like, see, your father is right. You haven't quit religion. You're still praying.
But you know that's not true. And
no, I know it's not true, but it's almost like the devil on the shoulder, like saying, haha, look at yourself. You haven't moved on. I feel like moving on when you have such a strong relationship with someone like that. Like my dad has always been my closest friend, and we have I think we have a father-son relationship that I haven't seen in many people, and I felt it changed because of this. Like now he worries about me. He asks me every time like if I try to talk about another topic, it's impossible because he's so afraid of me getting to hell. Like he's so afraid that I will end up in a place where he's not able to have a family with me.
Yeah.
And I understand his fear, because that's one of the things that was bringing me to not leaving theism was the hell fear. But when I decided that wasn't a strong enough argument for me to keep on holding on to what I did,
the way that you just encapsulated that is just leaving me speechless, because I feel like there are so many people, myself included, who can relate to that. And man, I love that you called. I really do. Give it time. Give it time. And the time may come that your dad wants to open up and talk more about it. And if that happens, know that you don't have to change his mind all at once. You know, you have an entire lifetime to be able to have this. And I think the most important thing to do right now is to reassure him that you're still his son. And hopefully that'll help.
Yeah. And I mean, as far as, you know, your if I understood correctly, the you know, he feels, or you think that he may feel that you're taking yourself from him and depriving him of part of his family, and again, I think, you know, be there for him and be the family member that you've always been, but also, to the extent in my head, at least, I applied that to the afterlife, and to show him that you're still a good person, and maybe he can get to a place, where he can rationalize, well, he's a good person. He may not believe in Jesus or what have you, but he's, still worthy of joining me in the afterlife or that kind of thing. I don't know if that's exactly where you were going with that sentiment, but that was the thought that occurred to me.
I actually had
pass that along.
I had a really heartfelt moment with a friend who's a very firm Christian, and we were having drinks, and it was late, and he was telling me how much he wants to bring me back to Christ. And the time came that he said, and he started to tear up, and he said, I don't want you to go to hell. And I remember I asked him, I looked at him, and I acknowledged first. I said, what you just told me is that you love me. After that, would you feel bad in heaven knowing that I was in hell? And he said, yes.
That's the central paradox of heaven.
Yeah. How would that be paradise if you knew that I wasn't there?
Either there's a facsimile of you there, or he's living eternity with the knowledge that you're suffering for eternity.
Exactly.
And in turn, he's suffering for eternity. And now we're in the good place. And
which you should watch. That entire thing, we started to get into that. Would you become an automaton if you went to heaven? Because otherwise you'd feel terrible for all the people who aren't there with you, right? And after that, it did have an impact, and the impact was a good one. And where we went after that, everywhere we went after that, I got to carry with me that in his way, he told me he loves me. And I understand that it's coming from a weird place of reasoning, but I mean, there have been times where I've been going through really hard times in my life, and there's somebody who says, I'll pray for you. And while it may seem, some people, when they say it, I know that they're thinking, I'm going to do the best that I think that I can to help you. And that's another way of saying I love you. Not always. Sometimes it's just condescending and shitty.
Depends on the tone.
Yeah, but you can tell sometimes, And so it's okay to acknowledge. But
that's one of the things that I tried to make clear to him was that my belief has changed, but he's still my dad, and I love him, and then hearing back that, well, I love you too, but I'm disappointed in you. It's like,
that's an awfully big but. I cannot lie.
Just that sir.
I'm ashamed. I'm done for the day.
All right, Sir Mix-a-Lot. No, that was good. That was really good. So I totally get it. Just unfortunately, in a time when we wish that it could be solved right now, it's going to take time. And in the meantime, you have so much more love coming to you that you have no idea, my friend. I hope someday that you can come to Austin so we can meet you.
Just pay for my plane ticket. I don't know.
Right. I wish I could turn this camera around and show you the teeny tiny building we're in. It is, Geoff, were you expecting a bigger building when you got here?
Well, I'd seen photos, so I knew exactly what to expect.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. We're basically broadcasting out of a broom closet, but we're doing the best we can with that broom closet. So
it's a great broom closet.
It really is.
Yeah. But I have a question, and then I will leave you. Do you have any good ideas of how I can still be a great son for my dad and try to get him to talk less about hell, because it's kind of yeah, it's starting to get to me that he talks so much about hell.
Sure.
I tried I tried to ask him like to respect my views, but he's like, but your views is not, it's not good because it will not bring you to where I am. Like, I understand.
It's going to take him some time. I mean, regardless of what advice we give, he kind of has to get there on his own.
Yeah.
But you can certainly ease the way.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the advice that I would give is one that I've heard other people say, and that is be honest and open. Say, you know, when you talk about this, it hurts me because of this reason, right? It doesn't hurt me because I'm afraid of hell. It hurts me because I care about my dad, you know. Just be open, be real. And I don't think I need to give you advice on how to be a good son. You sound like a great one.
Yeah, you clearly care about your father. What kinds of, you know, certainly you had conversations before this you know, shift in your viewpoint that weren't about religion. Go on your own, go back and revisit those kinds. Talk about soccer, talk about football. Sorry to use an Americanism, but talk about the things that you used to talk about, and you'll be doing two things. You'll be changing the subject or preventing maybe him from getting onto the subject, and also showing him that you're still the same son he had 2 months ago.
Yeah. But I got some messages from the back. The first is that it says, Frode is getting so much love in the chat. Can you make sure he knows?
Thank you. And
then the next one says, tell Frode he is getting all the hugs in the chat, and people want to know where Geoff got his shirt. Okay, never mind. We'll leave that one. And I actually, and you're getting love rings right now. As always, man, you are one of my favorite people.
Thank you.
I hope you take care and keep in touch. All right, brother?
I will.
All right. Bye-bye.
I am quite certain that the people back at my office have already clipped me saying, get my mouth around Frode, and that I am going to be haunted by that clip.
Okay, so there's something that I actually really, really, really need to bring up.
Sure.
So I've been keeping an eye on the live chat, and I try to. And we do get donations in the live chat. And because this is a nonprofit, we get 100% of that donation, right? And when it's not like super serious like that, I'll try and shout it out, but sometimes it gets through, but it doesn't mean that we don't absolutely appreciate it because it really, really helps. But we just got the biggest donation in live chat that Talk Heathen's ever gotten.
Really?
During that call. We just got a $500 donation by Neil Bradley.
That's amazing. Thank you, Neil. Oh, I shouldn't clap in front of him.
It's okay. So, number one, take that, atheist experience. Number two, thank you. Thank you so much. It is donations. It is. And this is the first time I've ever seen something like this. But it is donations that keep us running. We are a nonprofit, and we've got to keep the lights on. And they've decided to pay me. I get to do. Did you know I get to do this for a living?
I did know that.
That is the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
And
isn't it great?
Our producer Mark also is employed by the ACA. And
wonderful.
It's because of the donations from amazing people that we're able to do that. Neil, thank you so much. Also, hello from Tennessee, from Forklift Wizard, and a whole bunch of other people. And you guys just, thank you. But I know we've been on these calls for a while, and I'm dying to get into the next one.
And the shirt is available at atheists.org. There's a button for their shop, and we sell them there. So you can make a little donation to American Atheists.
Yeah.
And get your lovely, where am I here? Skip Church. Oh, I went behind my Skip Church shirt.
You know, American Atheist is one of those groups that I absolutely adore, and I love what you guys do. And if you want to see and support the amazing efforts that they're doing, please check them out. Did American Atheists get the domain atheists.org?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
We have atheist-community.org. I am super jealous. But let's actually move on to a theist. Oh my gosh. Brandon R. just put in another $500. Holy shit. Okay. Wow. I don't even, this is, okay, so you're hired.
You guys can pay me to come down like once a week and all.
No, you've got good work to do.
I do have a lot of work to do.
So let's move on to, actually, you know what, before we get to Jonathan and Gregory and Alex and Ike, you stay on the line, guys. We want to talk to all of you. I do want to thank our patrons, because while we're talking about it, we do have patrons. And it's because of that patronage that we're able to go, hey, we can reliably pay employees, right? And we actually have our top donor, Dale Smith, who has doubled our top before, because it was $20. Dale Smith is pledging $40 per episode.
Per episode.
Which is unbelievable. Our number one. Our number two, Nando Gonzalez, Janet Reyes, of course, David Arland, and Alex Watts. It's so huge. Thank you so much. Yeah, even in the back, they're popping it in the lower third. Wow, thanks. I mean, really, that is amazing. Special shout out, of course, I have a special place in my heart for Janet Reyes. Janet has done so much on social media to help us out. Her and the other SMSs, they are the social media specialists with each of our different branches. And so we have Facebook, we have our email team, we have Reddit, we have, Hootsuite, which is Instagram and Twitter. We have, did I mention Facebook? We have Discord. But all of these people, right? Joy, I don't know if I've said your name on air, and that's a shame for me to have not done that sooner. Joy, I love you. John, Ian, Janet. If it wasn't for you, we wouldn't be able to create this community where people like Frode can go and have somewhere to go and be able to talk to people. And you have been the legs that we've stood on. And there's no amount of thanks in this world that I could give that could sum up everything that you've put into it. So from the bottom of my heart, and I know this comes from the people on the other side of this wall, and I know that any other host sitting in this chair would say the same thing. From the bottom of our hearts, thank you. Now it's time to move to the next caller, I think. All right. Jonathan in Arizona has been waiting for a really long time. Jonathan, you're live with Eric and Geoff. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you guys today? Good?
Shell-shocked.
Yeah. Let's do it for you.
I mean, to be honest, it's unbelievable. Every time you think that, you've seen it, you kind of get blown out of the water. It's been a big love fest today. But what would you like to talk about?
Honestly, I didn't think I would even get on. I thought the show was like, run for an hour and that was it. So yeah, I'm surprised I even had a chance to talk to you guys today.
Oh, all of the people who are waiting on the line, we will talk to. And we're really, really happy. Thank you for staying on.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I always enjoy listening to you guys, if anything.
Yay. So what's up?
But, yeah, so I guess the question I have is, it's not something new. I think probably everybody who's watched the show or shows similar or just interested in these topics altogether already know about it. But the concept of objective morality, I guess I can only ask you and Geoff personally. But do you believe there is such a thing as objective morality?
No. But
just all.
Well, is it all relative? I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
I actually kind of interrupted you. I didn't mean to.
No, it's all good, man. Mine's a little nuanced. Do you got one?
I was just going to say, there, part of my issue is definitional, and frankly, my thinking on this has very much piggybacked on Matt Delahunty's talks and whatnot. That once the objective, and he's sitting right out there, and I'm going to butcher his point of view inevitably. But when it comes to objective morality, once you have decided subjectively what moral is, then there is an objective way of achieving whatever you've defined moral to be. But it's up to each of us to kind of decide what we think is the moral ideal and what makes an act moral. Sure. So it's subjective. It's not relative, and there are objective aspects to it. It's wibbly wobbly, timey wimey stuff.
Yeah. And that's a good conversation.
And I'd actually like to piggyback on that, right? Because up until that point, I agree. The only things that I would add to it is that we're able to do that when we have all of the information, right? We're able to make an is assessment, right? We can be armchair quarterbacks after the fact and go, these are all of the potential things that you could have done in that situation. This was the optimal thing to do.
Sure.
That would be the most moral thing to do. But because we can't have that proscriptively because we don't have all of the information all of the time, we have to rely on, these rules of thumb, to determine what is the best course of action. And I think we as a society have made a whole lot of mistakes doing that, but we learn from our lessons, right? And if you want to go even further, right? I know a lot of people talk about Kant. And Kant, I feel there are some parts that are worth picking up, right? Kant ultimately said that, everybody, that there are people who, there are things you act on, and then there are things that have this intrinsic value. And we assign that value, and then he points to a God and said, God assigns that value. But we don't need that God piece. Really, we are assigning value to things, and that's okay. It's icky. It feels bad. I wish, that there was not a wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey answer. But in the end, I think it's the honest one that we can give. Specifically, Eric and Geoff.
Just so I'm clear, I just want to just make sure I'm understanding.
Sure.
Basically, the basic answer to the question is no, there is no objective morality. It doesn't exist.
Yeah, it's just, so again, if you can make the distinction, right, I think you can have something objectively moral if you have all of the information around it. And so you can armchair quarterback objective morality. But in the proscriptive sense, right, the ought, I don't agree that you can have an objective. Does that make sense at all?
Yeah, what you're saying makes sense. Absolutely. Basically it's like, you have to look at, case by case and say, was that moral or was that immoral? Is that kind of essentially what you're saying?
Yeah.
And it's hard to know in the moment.
Yeah, and it can change over time. What if we're basing our judgments off of something that is actually really immoral, and in 100 years, our great-great-grandchildren or whatever look back and go, man, they didn't get it right. Mm-hmm. The only thing that I can hope is that they've gotten closer and made a better world, and that's why they're looking at us with disdain, because they are that much better than us.
And then 100 years after that, what if that generation is saying, no, they got it wrong, and the other one had it right to begin with? So it kind of seems like there's a dead end, and there really is no such thing as, right or wrong.
We do the best that we can. And there is a right or wrong if you're setting it on human well-being, right? So if you're setting it on human well-being, you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater and say, just because there's, not an objective, there is no right or wrong. Because that's not true at all, right? The whole example that we gave you is one of value judgments that we place depending on those situations. At no point did we say, it's all bullshit, so forget it, everybody do whatever you want. Like, that's not the case. I just want to make sure that that's not mischaracterized.
Mm-hmm.
Also,
so essentially, there's no absolute morals. Then is that right?
Maybe, but
so maybe you're saying maybe there is, maybe there isn't.
Well, if there is, I don't know how I can tell what those absolute morals are. I hope that we're living our lives as morally as we can. And if we're not, I hope that we get better at it. But that kind of takes you back to that whole, the issue with the scientific method is you're always testing whether or not it's wrong, right? And if you can't prove it wrong up until, a certain degree, people will take that as what it is. But you're always working in that other process to prove a thing wrong. We actually don't have the way to prove a thing absolutely right. And because of that, we're always going to be testing. We're always going to be looking, even if we have stumbled on the right answer. It's that drive. And I actually kind of like that. It makes the world interesting.
So, can the scientific method really determine morality?
I just use that as an example to kind of show that whole, is there absolute morality? If there was, I don't think I would be able to know. That's uncomfortable.
And it depends on, you could say, an action which increases the ability of more life to thrive is morally superior to an action which does not allow as much life to thrive. Whether or not organisms are thriving is entirely studyable by science. So if that's what you define as the moral act, then you can absolutely study it through the scientific method.
Well, I'm glad you ended with if that's how you define it, because I actually had a question when you said that thriving is like a value of what we would consider to be moral. But is it objectively true that thriving is a good thing?
Well,
no, because
again, that's the objective word. That's kind of the best we got, man. I really don't know what to say from there. I know that if you were to say, therefore, it's not true, it'd just be an appeal to consequent. We're stuck in this.
I'm not saying that. Basically, what I'm struggling with is I want to know if objective morality is true or exists or not. And I'm sure, you guys probably want to know the same thing. But if the answer is no, there's no objective moral values, then all you're left with is, subjective independent opinions of the individual.
Well, let's say that's the case. Is there any reason to think that isn't? Well, is there any reason to think that isn't the case?
There could be good reasons to believe that. And if that's true, that there's no such thing as right or wrong.
We didn't say that. Hold on. That's mischaracterized. Right. We never said there's no such thing as right or wrong, and we never said it's just your opinion.
I stopped myself to correct myself.
Okay.
I didn't mean to do that.
Right.
Good or bad, moral, immoral, I guess.
Well, I would say that there are things that are immoral, yes, and there are things that are bad, yes. Again, we're not saying we don't think that there are things we
all know there's things that are good or bad, celebrating your son's birthday is good. I would think that's good. Rape is obviously bad. And I don't think many people disagree with those two statements. But if subjective morality is the only morality that exists, if I'm wrong, please explain to me why I'm wrong. If subjective morality is all that exists, how can it be any more than just an opinion or, a group of opinions, a society's opinion?
Sure.
Well,
so here's the thing. If this society is all we have, then that's all we have. We rely on that. And also we're built in. There are a lot of mechanisms in our own brains biologically that lend toward moral and ethical behavior, right? And because of that, as being a social species, that's what gets us there. By the way, two quick things. I just, before I forget, number one, there is not going to be a Patreon after show as a thank you to all of the donors. And I just want to include Brandon R. and Neil Bradley, who each donated $500. Instead of a Patreon section after the show, we're going to keep this open for everyone to be able to listen to. We are going to run live until we finish our calls today. Thank you so much. So sorry about that. Going back to it, Jonathan, if that's all we have, the other thing, sorry, Matt Dillahunty is sitting in the front row disagreeing with me a lot. He says, call him. He wants to talk to you on the Atheist Experience. But as long as you're talking to the two of us, I mean, I don't know what to say, man. You know, it's the best that I've got. And the funny thing is it's an observation after the fact. I know that I've behaved in a moral way before I came to understand why I behave in a moral way. And so this is the best approximation that I have. And if I'm wrong, I'd love to be, just let me know, because I want to know what's true.
And I wanted to add that, believing that it's dictated by a higher power doesn't fix the problem. It just removes it one step.
No, I absolutely agree with that.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that I got that point on the record.
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. I absolutely agree with that. It's just something that I struggle with when I think about it. Because it just, again, well, let me ask you this. Is it true that either objective morality exists, or if it does, objective morality, if it does not exist, only leaves subjective morality. Is that true?
Well, that's kind of where I drew that line, right? After the fact, if you can pull all of the information around a thing, you can come to an objective conclusion, right? If you were to, I don't know, somebody saves a baby from a burning building, right? And you look at, that after there are tons and tons of ways to be able to determine, that was objectively a moral thing to do. But I guess the other side of it, though, I got to ask you, John. John or Jonathan?
Either one's fine.
Okay. I'm going to call you John because that's two people I adore are named John. So I'm going to call you John. So, John.
Now it's 3.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. So, John, my brother and John Tab, absolutely adore them. Now, you too. I like it. John, I have here that you're a Christian or
yes, that's right.
A theist. The proposition that there is an objective morality in God, right? Would that be something that you would agree with, that God creates objective morality?
Creates? No.
Okay.
I wouldn't agree with that. Because if God said, rape was objectively moral, I would not believe that. So
really,
no.
But
I think
okay.
So. I guess the way that I have this rationale in my mind on objective morality through God is the only way I can make sense of it. Because I've been asked a question from a philosophy teacher, actually. Is something moral because God says so?
Youth of Frode.
Or does God say something is moral because it is moral? Something to that effect.
Yeah, that's the Youth of Frode dilemma. That's a fantastic exercise to go through. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I thought about the question, and to me, it seemed like a false dichotomy. Okay. That here's the only two possible answers, and it has to be one of them. But because I couldn't say one or the other, because they both, lead to, I guess, other questions about God or God's character and stuff that don't make sense to me. Mm-hmm. It's the only rational way I can think about it is morality is objective because God himself is the epitome of what is moral.
Okay, so, question for you.
God doesn't call something moral. Like he doesn't create an event and say, this is moral because I say so. And if I say so, that's what makes it moral. It's because God is, objectively good or the transcendent goodness of all that can be good, that I believe that's how objective morality can exist.
So good exists outside of God, and God can't change what's good and what's not.
Well, God is the epitome of goodness.
Okay.
So I guess
right,
the question is, could you anthropomorphize other things into being actual? Like, I know Richard Dawkins said smelly, right? The idea that something can be more or less smelly, and so that means there must be a thing that is objectively the most smelly, and I call that thing God. Right?
Interesting.
That what they did was take a quality and then anthropomorphized it into a person and then insisted that person exists. And I just don't have any way to be shown that you can anthropomorphize a concept like that and then say that that thing exists in the real world. You know what I mean?
I do, yeah. And honestly, I absolutely agree with that. If I'm being perfectly honest with myself, then yeah, I have to say that's true. That's a valid statement, valid argument. Like I said, in the only rationale that I can come to, if I believe that objective morality does exist, that it exists through God's like perfect morality in His own character, His own being.
I feel
I'm not saying I'm right. I'm not saying this is why I'm Christian. I'm just saying when I think about this
sure
thing, it's the only rational way I can, kind of, I guess, explain it to myself.
I feel like using the tools that you're using, that wouldn't feel to me like a very satisfactory answer. It would feel rather manufactured, And I would again say, we're sitting here on the other side telling you, hey, we could absolutely be wrong too. And it's uncomfortable. And it's a weird, uncomfortable place to, sit and talk about. That said, it's kind of the best we got. I'm really interested if you make any other progress on this or you consider this, I'm really interested to find out if you still consider that a sufficient answer, because I would imagine that just wouldn't ring as true, because you obviously know that baked into the answer you're given is not a very sturdy, response. It just doesn't feel like it would hold weight based on what you said. That's just
it's really the only thing that I've thought about that makes sense, even if it's not like this is the greatest argument for objective morality or God or anything like that. It's just, I do believe that objective morals exist. I believe that right and wrong exists, independent of any of our feelings or opinions or anything. I don't think there's anybody in the world, any sensible person in the world, who would say that raping a child is not objectively immoral. That's not anyone's matter of opinion. We all know that raping a child is probably one of the most evil, immoral things a human being can do to another human being.
Yeah, we agree. I mean,
that,
I don't
that
think
to me is not something that is subjective. I don't see how that can be my opinion says that, so therefore that's why it's true.
Because it's not just based on opinion. Again.
Well, I mean, isn't that what subjective is, though?
No, that is if you limit yourself to being the only one on the planet, John. We live in a society. We live with other people, and we need to be able to interact in that world. Really quickly, we lost one of our theist callers. I'm really bummed. That might be them calling in on the other line. Let's find out. Let's hope. Fingers crossed. That said, I completely lost my place. Darn it.
Oh.
You said that it would only be true if I was the only person on the planet.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, we live in a society, right? We're social creatures, and because of that, there are a whole lot of things that go into it. It's not just one person's feelings that make something moral or immoral, right? You live in that world with other people, and that makes all the difference. I mean,
but why should that matter? Like, not being a cynic, obviously, but
no.
I mean, why should that matter?
Well, it matters because if you rape a child, you're going to go to prison, right? You're also going to be excluded from society, right? There are consequences.
Specifically from a moral standpoint.
Oh,
so this is probably a bad like hypothetical. I don't really like to jump into hypotheticals or anything because they can get pretty ridiculous. But like, here's a question I asked myself, and I don't even have an answer for it. I'm just kind of sharing it with you, and maybe you have some thoughts on it. I have a son. He's about to be 2 years old. I love him more than anything in the world. He's my whole life. If it came to some point in my life where like he and I were starving, if my son was starving and there was nothing I could do except for steal from another family who was starving and they happened to have food.
Jonathan as Jean Valjean.
Give it to my son because I care more about him,
Yeah.
Did I make an immoral decision? I don't know what the answer is.
Doesn't that feel weird? It feels real weird. But
what does?
The hypothetical that you just gave, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I think of Jean Valjean and Les Mis, I think Jean did the right thing. But also, if there's a time of crisis and there's not enough, if there's a scarcity that requires, that something like that happens, I think there's a degree of empathy there. There are stories, let's say, I read a story of a hospital, and I actually hope this is not true, but I sadly think that it is, that there was a hospital that was in Katrina, I think, right? The floodwaters were coming, and they could only get so many people out, and they could not get everyone out. Mm. And so I think it was more than one person, but it might have been one person, went to the wards full of people who were terminal and killed them. Injected them with something that killed them because they thought there's no way we're all going to survive this. This is the best thing to do, right? And tragically, after that happened, they were rescued. And that person had to live with that.
Yeah.
Do I think that person was acting in a way that was malicious? I don't think so. But also what they did was terrible. It's just another one of those things that kind of illustrates that we live in a world that has a whole lot of wibbly wobbly time. Is that what you said? That's right? What I said, yeah. Wibbly wobbly stuff. And we're just inhabiting it.
You reference Les Mis, I reference Doctor Who. It's fine.
So I absolutely don't want to put words in your mouth or anything, Eric. So if I'm misconstruing the story you just told, and then the opinion you had on it, absolutely stop me dead in my tracks. Because what I heard was that when you said, did he do something wrong? I don't think so. It sounds to me like you were saying that he didn't murder somebody else to save himself, and I don't think he did anything wrong.
No. That's a really good question. I'm glad you're giving me the chance to reply.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't think that murdering someone to save yourself is the only way that something can be justifiable, right? I used to own Newfoundland dogs, and my last dog, Zoe, she had cancer and tumors throughout her entire body, and she was in extraordinary pain. And so the choice was to give her a few more days where either she'd be knocked out from medications to prevent the pain, or to, let her suffer until she died, or to give her a death with dignity, right? And to, in that spirit of empathy, put her down so she didn't have to suffer, right? I can't tell you what was in the mind of that person, but when I read it, that was the thought that I had.
Mm.
So, I mean, again, we can come to different conclusions on it, but it's just one of those things. It's one of those really weird, fucked up things.
And if the day
and
after...
that's why I'm so confused on, if there's no God and that's the truth, then, I want to know that. If there is no objective morality, I want to know that too. But I can't think of, and this is probably an argument from ignorance, but I can't think of any other reason that objective morality can exist other than, innate feeling of, I believe I know what's right and wrong, and independent of what everybody else thinks. Like, I can't explain why I know that hurting people is wrong, stealing from people is wrong, killing people is wrong. I don't know how I know that. You know what I'm saying?
Evolutionary biology.
I wouldn't say it like that. But I believe it's true, and I think that. It seems kind of common sense that everybody knows that that's true. Everybody knows that raping a child is immoral. So, how do we know this?
Because we evolved to be social animals. And the only way for social animals to survive, the way that social animals like us have found to survive is to work together. And so certain actions make that impossible. And therefore, those individual members of the species who did not have that sense often get weeded out.
And focusing on rape.
But I'm not an evolutionary biologist.
No.
I'm just, there's a reason why, a scientific reason why you might have that sense.
Well, and I actually want to piggyback on that. That yes, empathy, right, as found in us biologically, I think would play an incredibly large part. But at the same time, I think that this is a great example of how society has gotten so much better than the way it was before, right? There are examples in a lot of holy texts, including in the Bible, that says, slay the men and the women who've known men, but keep the virgins for yourself, right? And that is not just a biblical, a Christian Bible thing. There are different places that endorse rape, when you go far back, and there are still places that would be okay with rape around the world. I think this is a chance that we've had as people to...
If somebody's okay with rape, obviously a rapist is okay with rape, but I think he still knows it's wrong, know?
Actually, I don't know, man. I hope so.
Well, if he's the one being raped, he probably knows that it's wrong. He does, just because he's raping someone doesn't mean he doesn't know it. When he becomes the victim, he immediately knows it's wrong.
I guess I've just seen enough videos of people who felt justified in the atrocities that they've committed, and I've also seen societies that I cannot live in a world where there are that many people who are okay with rape, but have reasoned their way through it for one reason or another. But again, this is just one of those things that I think I'm so glad I live in 2018, man. Because I live in a better world than I would have if I had been, if I lived 1,000 years ago, 200 years ago, 50 years ago. My goodness, I am not a white man. That civil rights, oh my goodness. Yeah. So it takes a lot. I'm proud of where we've gotten.
I guess I just, as far as what we've discussed, I still don't have any, what's the best way to put it? I haven't gotten anything out of your guys' responses, and obviously, this is just what you guys know and what you guys believe and how you got there and stuff. But it seems like, again, the only morality that exists is subjective morality, and if subjective morality is all that exists, it's just a matter of our opinions.
Again, no. Matt just did an impression of Khan. Again, that throws the baby out with the bathwater. Do you understand why that throws the baby out with the bathwater? Okay, because if we're able to make determinations of what is more or less moral, if we're able to go, this was objectively the best way to go, which I said from the start, then obviously it's not just like my opinion, right? Because we can share that with other people. If I were to sit down with Geoff and we were to take a look at all of these different scenarios and talk about it, and we could come to an agreement probably about what was the most moral thing to do in that situation. You don't throw out morality because you can't have an objective basis for it. That is a baseless assertion.
Oh, that's not at all what I said.
Oh, please.
I'm agreeing that morality exists. I'm just saying, if it's subjective, how is it any more than opinion?
Because
if there's no standard outside of the standard that we create, which is biased, how is that any more than just our opinion?
Because
even if we say that it's morally good because humanity thrives or it continues on generations at a time, aren't we just pushing the question back? Well, what makes humanity's survival objectively good? Why does that matter? We're creating the standard ourselves, which means it's our bias, which comes down to our opinions, doesn't it?
I mean, we can only work from our own perspective. It's the fact that it's not simply my opinion when we can discuss an issue and arrive at an answer that is verifiable and that we can all agree on.
So if we agree on it, does that make it morally right?
No, we can all agree and be wrong. But the verifiable part is to me at least the crux of it.
Yeah, I guess what I'm wondering is how come that isn't sufficient? I feel like you made an assertion there, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but you said that if there is no objective morality outside of what we create, then it's just our opinions. Feels like an appeal to consequence, doesn't it? I mean,
if I did use the word "what we create," I didn't mean to.
Oh, okay.
I guess even if it's like when I say our opinion or like my opinion, as a society's opinion as a whole, whatever conclusion we come to on what is what is moral, what is not moral. It's just like I believe Geoff said a second ago, we could be wrong. Is there? I don't see how there is such thing as moral or immoral any more than just the opinions that we come up with, whether in a group or society or individually. That doesn't somehow come down to this was a matter of our opinions based on whatever information, our beliefs, what's better for society, humanity's progression, survival, stuff like this. Because to me, the next question is, okay, well, why is that ultimately good? Who decides that that's good? What are we using to make that belief?
Well, I guess I feel like I've tried to answer it to the best of my ability, and I'm sad that I don't feel like I've done a good job of summing it up. I think Matt might have he's much more experienced. But what I would say is, because it feels bad, or because it doesn't feel like enough, I guess the question is, if that was the case, right? If you were to follow that, if that was the case, then how would that make it wrong? How would that make it incorrect if that was the case? Like, I guess I just don't know how you're moving from it can't be true because of what you just said, and it not being
I'm absolutely
consequent.
No, absolutely. I'm not saying it can't be true. It absolutely could be true. I just don't know how to get there. I don't know how we can get to knowing that it's true.
I think you can't know anything, right? I think that.
And you know that.
Oh, hey. No, I describe it in terms of capital T truth and lowercase t truth, right? We're going to move as best we can toward what is true, and we're going to investigate the world around us to come up with what we know about it, right? And we're always going to strive for that capital T truth. We're always going to work toward it, but we're never really going to know when we hit on it. The best we can hope for is to get close to it. Right? It's reaching for something that we're never going to be sure that we can attain, right? That's why if somebody says, Eric, do you accept something as true? In my mind, I'm assigning a value to it, right? And that truth value is based on the tools that I have, the epistemological tools that I have, how I understand what is true or not true. And so if I believe that something is, if I think that something is 90% likely, and it is that Geoff had eggs this morning, I mean, I have absolutely no problem saying, okay, Geoff had eggs this morning. It just, that's how those things influence the way that I behave. It's in likelihoods, it's in percentages, right? And so, I mean, it's a paradox, right? Mm-hmm. How can we know, how can we get to capital T truth? I think that in practice, we can't wait to act until we have capital T truth, especially if we can never get to it. And so if that's the case, and to the best of my knowledge that is the case, then we have to act in this world in the meantime. And sometimes that means that we have to learn from our mistakes, and hopefully we learn from others' mistakes, right? It's just that.
Yeah, I do understand. So when I keep mentioning like that, it seems to me, and it's not a truth claim, it just seems to me that subjective comes down to a matter of opinion. And you disagreed with that earlier, if I'm not mistaken. Did you?
I'm sorry. The live chat is talking about well-being, and I just wanted to, sorry, it kind of distracted me, but well-being has a lot to do with it, and if I didn't bring that up enough, I apologize, but could you say that again? I got distracted.
Oh yeah, no problem. I keep coming down to like when I come back to subjective morality, that all comes down to a matter of opinion, and if I'm not mistaken, you disagreed with that. Is that right?
Well, if you're saying then it's all a matter of opinion, what that is communicating to me is there's a lot of baggage behind that I would disagree with, right? And the baggage would be, if it's just your opinion, right, then it wouldn't matter from one person to the next. Oh, this person thinks rape is wrong. This person thinks rape is right. And so it doesn't matter. But what I'm saying is we're acting in the aggregate, and our behavior is dependent on the society that we're in, right? And so if somebody is, let's say, a sociopath, right, and they don't have that same empathy that other people have, and they act in a way that is against the society that they're in, we're going to remove that person from society. And we can actually determine that that person has made immoral actions if they take immoral actions. There are people who are sociopaths that are upstanding members of society, right? Because they realize that they still need to behave by those rules, even if they don't completely understand why. But in every single part of that, it's just your opinion feels like it throws away what is important about it, and that is that we live in this world together. Does that help? Does that kind of help illustrate why I think that saying it's just your opinion is not a good, because there's just so much to it. There's so much more to it.
Well, I understand that there's negative connotations to saying it's just my opinion or your opinion or our opinion. But whether or not whether or not that statement alone is true or false is not, is not dependent on the specifics,
And
so basically, if I were to say,
I just want to jump in real quick because it seems like you're equating subjective with opinion, and those two aren't the same thing. I can, my subjective experience of an event is my own, but it's not my opinion. It is factually how I perceived an event.
That was actually because it seemed like if I keep coming down to subjective is a matter of opinion. That was something I was going to ask is how are we defining subjective? And maybe my problem in understanding is because I don't have the same idea of as subjective, what that means as how you guys are trying to explain it to me. So what does subjective mean to you guys in the specific conversation of morality?
Well, I'm defining it within the specific context of this conversation. I'm not sure. I'd have to give it more thought than probably we have time for on the show.
Yeah.
But for at least broadly, subjective as opposed to objective involves looking at it from within my perspective with my lived experience and the responses and things that I bring to a situation and the frame of reference in which I examine things. And so what I personally subjectively may find to be important to remember about an event, I'll keep using that, is my perception of the event, whereas objective means stepping outside and looking at a videotape of an event outside of any person's lived experience.
I'd like to jump in.
Sure.
That was a really honest, open, definition. I think mine is probably overly simplistic now, but
we could have gone to Google and gotten a definition.
Yeah, but that would be, the Google's definition. That wouldn't be how we're thinking about and interacting with it. And
in
so
this conversation.
Yeah, I think that subjective has a lot more to do with flavor of ice cream, right? I think that if you're talking about something subjective versus objective, objective things can be independently verified. Subjective things are related only to the individual. And if you're saying that everything is subjective, to me, the way that shapes things is that would mean that everything is only related to each individual and their own individual tastes. And I think that there are things that are objective, and there are things that we can determine objectively. And I mean, there is an entire form of logic around that, by definition, things being true, and then being able to determine what is true and not true using logic. And so I think that when you're talking about morality, if there was one person on Earth, right, and they did not need to interact with other living things, then I would grant to you that it's all just subjective because it's up to the taste of that one person left. But because we operate in a society with other people, that the context of that means that you can no longer make a subjective moral opinion that way. It's at the will of the society that you're in, right? You don't get to make up your own morals when you live in a world with other people in it. You have to work together. That's the best I can do to describe that.
Yeah. And I do appreciate your guys' individual thoughts on this and stuff like that. It does mean a lot to me. I haven't gotten to where I feel like I understand why it's not a matter of opinion. Especially when you just said, if it was one person, it'd be like, no, subjective morality would be only objective. I'm not sure I agree with that, actually. But introducing the fact that there's other people now in society and we all come to an agreement on what's moral, or what it's still moving it from it's my opinion to now it's all of our opinions that happen to be mutual.
Well, I feel like that's how humans have interacted with morality as long as there's been societies. To the best of my knowledge and the best of my understanding.
I hate to say this because it's like, I've heard it before and I hate to say it, but it's like jumped in my mind, that's what the Nazis thought.
Yeah.
We don't think that they were right.
Well, and I hope that by learning from really terrible reasoning and by learning and praising the worth and value of other human beings, we're never going to get there again. And in that way, I think that we're creating a more moral world. But with that, Jonathan, we've been in this call for a long time. We've got some other callers that we want to get to. Unless, Jeff, you had...
No, I was just going to say, I wish he'd called while we were doing Atheist Experience and Matt was here. And because
Matt still wants to talk to him.
Well, I know.
So call back in.
When should I call back in?
In about a half hour, 45 minutes.
Just call the same number?
Yep, call the same number, and we'll go from there.
All right, I really appreciate you guys talking with me, man.
Thank you. Take care, brother. This was a good call. I love this kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's not an area that I'm well-versed in, so it's interesting to play in this realm for a while.
Take care, brother.
You guys, too.
I thought that logic and ethics and those kinds of things are pretty standard prerequisites in before going to...
Well, sure, but I haven't delved into the philosophies of objective morality and all that stuff beyond, the occasional YouTube video of Matt's. It's not something I've delved deeply into. I can talk about ethics.
This is my jams. I love this so much. And if I'm wrong, I want to get better. I want to always be better. But yeah, that's something I absolutely adore. Alex and Ike have been waiting for so freaking long.
They have like 2.5 hours for Alex.
And get this, Ike actually has something that's related to the last call, and I want to talk to them. Ike in Colorado Springs, thank you so much for waiting for so long. You're talking to Eric and Jeff.
No problem, guys. It's a pleasure. Thank you, gentlemen.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
So I wanted to call and talk about morality in general, particularly secular morality, and address objective morality. I'm of the opinion that Okay.
Hello?
Where'd you go?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah. I'm excited. Help us.
Okay.
What do you got, man?
Yeah. So objective morality, the closest thing I can come up with is genetic altruism.
Okay.
I have seen moral systems all over the world. I saw in Afghanistan that people thought it was more moral to have sex with a 12-year-old boy against his will because he wasn't a woman and he wasn't yet a man, and the Quran says it's a sin to sleep with a man. So 12-year-old boy, not a man, not a woman, that West is fine. And I mean, that was their cultural morality, and it's sickening and disgusting to me. But at the time, I couldn't do anything about it. These guys were our allies. All we could do is not facilitate it on our bases. And, it made me question morality in general. And becoming more secular in life, I identify as painfully agnostic. I'm not in one camp or the other. I'm trying to figure things out. And when it comes to that, I'm also very much, I would say, pathologically individualist, to the point that it's caused a lot of problems. Contrarian. So it's no surprise I fall in the libertarian camp. But
get out of my head. I was about to say
yeah.
But you're not one of the gold fringe on the flag libertarians, are you?
No,
okay.
Good Lord. I don't want to do away with everything that makes the first world magnificent.
Okay, good.
And, that's where my libertarian philosophy comes from, expanding liberty to individuals. Individual sovereignty, not sovereign citizens. Those guys are nut jobs. But it comes to trespassing against another's individual rights. We say in the Constitution a God-given right, and a lot of those, what they meant by that was an innate right. We had a huge argument. I know Geoff is fully up on all of this crap in the Constitution and the writing and where.
I will say that's actually in the Declaration of Independence, if I remember correctly.
Yep. I'm sorry, you're correct. But we put that in there because a lot of our leaders were deist or openly atheist, but they had to accommodate. It was practical, reasoned rational self-interest, reasoned selfishness that helps the society because the society helps you. So what we need to do with that morality is look at each individual person and say, just because I have X beliefs doesn't mean you as a person should be held to Y constrictions. Your rights are your rights. We have individual rights that are enumerated in our Constitution and in many other constitutions all over the world. We need to be respectful of the individual. We don't need a God to tell us that if it's rude, if it's disrespectful, it's not okay. Just don't do it. You have a right to be rude and disrespectful, but society is going to kick you in the butt by shunning you, ignoring you, whatever. We don't need God. We don't need an ultimate authority because we have that inbuilt genetic altruism, but we also have a societal norm. We sign the societal contract. Whether we sign it or not, by choosing to live in a society, we choose to accept those rules, that set of morals. And it is incredibly subjective. I recognize that. We have to look at each situation. We have a drive to go.
And I do want to jump in and say that, not all laws are moral. There are plenty of immoral laws, I would argue.
Agreed.
I'm waiting to see where you go with this line of thinking.
Yeah, you've built up a really good stage. I guess we're waiting for a punchline.
Okay. Punchline. If I wouldn't want it done to me,
and not necessarily,
it shouldn't be done to others. Okay. Basically, we have a system in the country, and it's been screwed up. Still is screwed up. We need a lot of overhaul. And that's not saying, well, you have undue privilege, let's restrict you. That's not saying, that's saying we need to look at this stuff as people and look at, we're a capitalist society. Let's look at some market solutions practically, whether it's English as a second language and people are getting upset about that. But those individuals are trying to become citizens or live in this country. They have a set of rights. That set of rights say they have the opportunity to the best education or the right to the opportunity of the best education we can provide.
Okay.
That's it.
I guess I just wanted to jump in a little bit.
I'm sorry, I'm getting off track.
No, just because it went into politics, and there are a couple political things there that I would say either just by the fact that they aren't that way, or
I'm just not sure we're talking about morality. And
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cypherpunk just
morality.
Hold on just a second.
Sorry to interrupt.
Cypherpunk is uber elite. Do you remember elite speak?
Yeah.
Cypherpunk just donated $133.70. He is 1337 elite. Cypher, thank you. Thank you.
Nice.
I know, right?
He even added the extra zero, so it wasn't just $13.37.
I love it. I love it. Okay, go on. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Okay. We don't need to look to the future to see what is right and what is wrong. If we treat each person as a person, individual, irrespective of any of the outside crap, we bleed the same red. We need to look from that basis up, treat that person the way you want to be treated, and encourage that through respectful interactions, like you've been fostering. I believe this. Well, I disagree. You need to consider this. But not just in conversation. In general, morality is not just what you do to another person. It's how you behave in general. When you close the car door and turn into a jerk on the road, but you're a nice person in person, that's not very moral.
Sure.
Morality is encompassing.
I think we agree on that. I think that we could probably sit down respectfully with a beer and talk about politics for 20 hours. But as far as the golden rule and trying to treat each other with the same kind of respect that we, would want to be treated with is fantastic. I don't think it responds specifically to whether or not morality is objective or subjective or anything in that way, but I think that you outlined something that most of us would absolutely agree with, that the golden rule doesn't need a god to make it.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that there are other versions of the golden rule that are even better. And if it springs to mind, I will tell you what it is, because I heard it from...
Do others what you would not have them...
No, it was like the platinum rule, and Jen Peoples actually...
Platinum rule, treat other people the way they should be treated.
Thank you.
That's what I've always heard.
I love it. Anyway, Ike, we're going to move on to the last caller, but thank you so much for waiting for so long. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for your time. You gentlemen are wonderful. Keep doing what you're doing.
Good talking to you.
I agree. Dude, I'm just some asshole on the air. Like, you actually do shit.
You guys do a lot. You guys, giving support to Frode and...
Yes, but I feel like you have a skill set that you brought to bear by going to school and hammering that out and working very hard to be where you are so that you can help be on the front lines and protecting our rights. And I am insanely appreciative of it. So in that way, well, I'm just some
thank you. You're going to make me blush in high def. That's fantastic.
Dude, I mean, really, I think that, you and people like you make this a wonderful world, and I'm so deeply appreciative of it.
Wow.
So,
the work that you guys do and that the ACA has been doing for 10 years is 20 years. I'm sorry. Gosh.
No worries.
I've been consuming it for 10 years.
Well, I think we can finish sucking each other's dicks after the show. Let's move on. Alex in Rhode Island.
On that note.
Yeah. I always feel weird when people say nice things to me. I'm sorry. It's a reaction. Alex, you're live. How's it going?
Oh, good. How's it going with all you? I love all the comments about various things that are going on.
So do we.
Yeah. What did you want to talk about?
So basically, long story short, I have been an atheist for about 6-ish years, and my family is, the family members I'm immediately surrounded by are not, strongly religious. My mother didn't really go to church that often until her mother got sick and subsequently died. But anyway, one of the things that I originally would say to people was, religion do, dumb things. And in general, believing weird, random stuff that's not proven makes people do dumb, irresponsible, and potentially harmful things. And, I am aware that there are a lot of, people who donate their time and their money and things because they have this belief in a higher power that, we want them to do that. And that there are people that, do a lot of good. There are a lot of religious people who do good things. There are also a lot of non-religious people who do good things. And I don't know, should we be, partial to the people that use what they believe to do good? I mean, it's the same, pathway, if you will, the same thing that causes people to do bad things. When people blow themselves up because they think it'll get them into heaven, or, less extreme cases, we have so many endangered plant and animal species because there are beliefs that if you consume or ritualistically kill some of these things, you're going to get some spiritual or medicinal benefit from it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Very well.
Mm-hmm.
More than a few up till 2 a.m. conversations with a former roommate of mine that were all about, alternative medicine and that kind of thing. And I kept going back to, how harmful it can be to promote an unverified, medical treatment, because it creates a space in which someone who could get effective medical treatment chooses not to in favor of the, I don't know, cheaper or more pleasant non-treatment that doesn't have any, evidence to back it up that it's even doing anything at all.
It's the person that I would rather, instead of, going and seeing a doctor and potentially dishing out money for that, they'd rather, drink some honey water and think that it's going to cure some form of bronchitis that if they do get better, their body probably just fought it off naturally. Things like that.
Right. The honey water is soothing in the meantime, but your body is still hard at work fixing the problem. And could get there quicker if you took, I don't know, Tessalon Pearl or something, some medication.
What's funny is while we talk to a lot of people about their individual beliefs, I'm glad that you called in with something, even though we all absolutely agree with it. It should be said more. I mean, in the meantime, Gwyneth Paltrow is, pushing her website Goop that has people put jade eggs up their vaginas and steam and laser themselves and all kinds of wackadoo stuff. The very real, very basic, hey, we live in a non-magical world, and that, believing in something that is not true has real consequences. It doesn't feel like it's said enough or reinforced enough. So I really appreciate that you called with that, because it should be something that everybody recognizes. And if it's not, then we got to talk about it enough until people do, because holy shit, that I don't know, of all the things that I, overcame when I moved from religious to atheist, that was not something that I needed to deal with.
Oh.
I never, because if something isn't true, and it can be damaging, obviously, you've got to figure out what is true.
Right. And if you feel that you can say, or are somehow justified in saying, my thing is beyond inquiry and beyond studying, and I don't need to show evidence for my particular woo, then then there's nothing you can say in response to the next person who says, well, my thing that's different than yours, I don't need to verify. I don't need to provide support for it either. And you can go into quite a spiral.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I'll admit, I still have a few kind of weird things that I, do, even if it's not necessarily proven to be the best idea or even that'll make a difference. For example, real quickly, certain plants, they say you should only repot them into a larger size pot if they're in an active growth state. Now, this is based on this idea that, hey, if you don't wait, you're going to disturb them and you could cause damage. And, and the way I evaluate it is, it does me no harm, really. I have another quick example, but it does me no harm to just wait until the plant is starting to grow again, because it doesn't need to be repotted if it's not growing. So why not just wait, a week or two or however long it's going to take and then repot it? And, maybe in the future, if I have enough extra things to work with, I can do a small experiment where I disrupt something that's not growing and I, let something grow before I disturb it and see if that makes a difference. This is one of those things where it's just a precautionary thing. Same thing if I'm working with moths and I don't know if the eggs are later fertile. Well, it doesn't take that much out of me to hold the eggs for a week and see if they develop, because you just put them in a cup. It's not like I'm chopping down a tree and having to shred it by hand and spend hundreds of dollars on equipment. It's just, you put something in a cup and wait a week. Not all of these things are created equal in terms of whether or not you should just play it safe. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and there's a distinction between, promoting something which has been, shown to be unverifiable and have no effect versus, an area where the evidence is inconclusive and therefore, hey, I'm going to do this because it's not harming anything.
Yeah.
And with the repotting the plants, maybe it makes a difference, maybe it doesn't. I haven't seen, a study that says one way or the other. there's seems to me to be a clear distinction between promoting something that has been shown not to do anything over and over again versus, taking a course of action that seems to you, to be prudent and, there's nothing that's indicated to you otherwise.
Yeah. I'm very.
I think we agree, and we would absolutely hold that at the core of it, if you have an unfounded superstition and you are promoting it as true, it has very real consequences. Alex?
Yes.
My laptop is about to die. We have gone on for almost an hour over.
Nice.
I know, right?
Yeah.
And out of all of that, out of the 860 people still watching, we were up over 900 for a little bit. We have only 286 upvotes. Let's fix that.
Wow.
Right?
Come on, guys.
I know.
How many downvotes?
Yeah, I got to smash that like button.
7.
I got to
smash that like button. And for everybody, Alex, I think we're going to let you go. But thank you for waiting for so long.
Oh, yeah, no problem. I got plenty done while I was waiting.
Oh, good.
Good.
Multitask.
Bye-bye. So if you haven't hit that like button, please hit that like button. If you have not subscribed yet, please, please, please subscribe. We popped over 34,000 subs, and I'm so proud of that. That is way more than the last time we talked. I think we were at 6,000 the last time.
Do not remember.
But it has slowed down. There have been some amazing donors, and we absolutely appreciate it. If you cannot donate, that is okay. Share it out. Write a good review. Those things get us out there so that more people can see it. Hitting the subscribe button actually matters a lot. So please, please do. If you can donate, please consider becoming a patron. Our Patreon is patreon.com/talkheathen-to-me. It keeps the lights on, and it keeps the people, right, including myself, employed, and our producer, Mark. Do we have the camera in the back? Can we move to the back? Yes! You have Mark on the left and Vern on the right, our producer and audio engineer, respectively. We adore you guys. Is that Chelsea and Silas in the back as well? We love you guys. If it wasn't for you, we wouldn't be able to make this happen. Oh, and Eric Pearson, yes. Can we get a round of applause for these guys in the back? They really deserve it. Thank you so much. And thank you to all of the people working online. Again, it's not just our SMSs, it's all of our mods. It's all of the people who are working to help create community. And this is my best life. I'm telling you, man.
And everybody, like we said, I don't know how many times, we're social creatures. We got to have community.
That's right. And we're building
If I could say community right, that would be helpful as well.
And that community actually gets to work on supporting, what we want to see in the world. And that's where you come in. And that's why I'm so proud to have had you on this show.
Well, I'm happy to be here. You're welcome.
So from there, we start with some love rings, right? And then, do you remember the sign-off for the show? If you say no, that's okay.
Putting me on the spot, and
no worries.
It's not coming.
No worries. So originally, when the Atheist Experience was in the public access building, they used to look at the camera and say, "We don't hate you, we just think you're wrong." And so we like that, but we preface it with something else, right? Because if you don't believe, you have community, and it's right here. Thank you so much, and we're so glad that you came to join us. And then together we look and we say, "We don't, but for those who do believe, we don't hate you, we just think you're wrong." You ready?
Yep.
For those who do believe...
I screwed it up.
No, it's okay. I've done it too. Ready? For those who do believe, we don't hate you. We just think you're wrong. Dude, thank you so much.
Welcome.
Oh my gosh. That's an absolute... I can't believe we went an hour over. Wow. It was a lot of fun.
Geoff, you get a slight break, and then you got to do it all again.